What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Thursday edition of the Stokastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Quite a ride this morning trying to get the lineup builder going, but we got it going thanks to the tireless effort of our boss, Jake Harry, and Eddie. You guys don't know Eddie. Maybe you do. If you've seen him in GPP's 1-800-EDDIE, he is usually at the top of the leaderboard when he does play. But he does a lot of work for us behind the scenes. So thank you for getting that up for us for the show. We are sponsored by BetMGM, and we have a great deal for you later. But for now, I want to talk to Cliffy because that's what I'm here for. How you doing today, Cliffy?
Hey, buddy. Not doing too bad. Riding high after the old Canada junior win over Team USA yesterday. It's actually a pretty good game. It's the first time I can remember in quite a while where you can say Canada's goaltending kind of saved in that game. Canada's goaltending for the last decade or so hasn't been very good, but pretty big slate here tonight. We have, Toronto's on the slate, so you have Matthews, you have McDavid, you have Draisaitl, you have McKinnon, you have Pasternak, you have Ovechkin, you have Jack Eichel returning, you have Max Pacioretty returning. It's quite the slate we have here. Lots of interesting matchups. And we have your boys coming to Montreal to visit the Canadiens. Pretty excited for this 10-gamer.
You say goaltending, I say officiating. But we'll digress. It's all right. I just wish that, the NHL players can get a international competition going in the next few years, because this is probably the best USA team that they'll have in a long time, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. But that's okay. We have a 10-gamer that we need to get through, so let's get through it. But before we do, you know the drill. Hit that like and subscribe so you can keep up with our DFS shows, offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. Super important to hit those likes. We like likes, but on the real, the more likes we get, the more we can bring you free content. And we know that you love it, and we love giving it to you. So win-win. And also don't forget to sign up for the Stokastic Hall of Fame by changing your avatar on DraftKings and FanDuel. Very easy. Just go to stokastic.com/avatar, download it. Then the hard part, but it's possible with all these tools that we have. Placed in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 contestants. You tweet the win to Stokastic HOF on Twitter, or if you don't have the tweet machine, you can email us with your screenshot. That'll get you a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. You also get a shout out on our weekly Hall of Fame segment. So if you're into getting your ego stroked like I do, look out for that. But let's get into this 10-gamer. Big totals, fun games. Lots of power play spots. Let's get into it. We have the Seattle Kraken with a 2.7 total. Heading into Toronto, the Maple Leafs have a 3.8 total. Martin Jones, Matt Murray confirmed. Probably the worst goaltending matchup on the slate. But here we are. Looks like the Leafs are running back the same lines here. Seattle going with Eberle, Burakovsky, Beniers.
That's right.
Yeah. Wenberg, Shorts, McCann. And then, looks like Gord, Bjorkstrand, Tolvanen, which has been a nice filler for my lineups. I worry about, Tolvanen not getting too much time 5-on-5, but there is stuff to like on both sides here. Like, listen, Marty Jones, Seattle goaltending, it's a story. They've been bad all year. Matt Murray, on the other hand, he was very good to start the season. He's been absolutely awful lately. So, listen, there is no ownership right now on Seattle. There is heavy ownership on the Leafs for good reason. They're 3.8 total at home going against Martin Jones, but Seattle road total at 2.7. Nothing to sneeze at here. Won't take much to get over the field. I think you have to consider both sides here.
Yeah, and it's the Seattle side I'm going to start with, actually. Pretty good point about Murray, and it's really just the goaltending in general. It's why, when everybody was really excited about how well the goaltenders were playing in October and November, I was kind of beside myself because it's like no one had remembered Freddie Anderson being really great for like the first 12 games of every Leaf season for the last 8 years and then just imploding over the next 4 months. So, we were talking in our Discord. I think over the Toronto's last 10 games, they're near the bottom 5 of the league in save percentage. Now, 10 games is not, you don't hang your hat on that or anything, but I think when you look at the entire season as, in total, it gives you a better picture than, how well those Leafs goaltenders were playing over that 5 or 6 week stretch there, October, November into early December. So it is the Seattle side I'm kind of interested in. It is that Beniers, Burakovsky, Eberle line that I do have some interest in. You're right. There's no ownership. Top Stacks tool has them as 0.1%. Like nobody's going to be playing them here tonight. The Toronto top line, since the start of December, basically league average by expected goals against per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. It's certainly not bad. And there are, they do dominate shifts because they're so good offensively, but it's not like they're impervious defensively either. Like this isn't, going in to face Boston 1 or something like that. Right. So, that Beniers line doesn't have a huge sample, but the one thing that is nice is that they've all been skating on the same power play unit together with Justin Schultz. And since Thanksgiving, that Toronto penalty kill really hasn't been certainly not bad by any stretch, but not elite. 14th by shots against per 60 minutes, 20th by goals against per 60 minutes. They don't take a lot of penalties. Seattle doesn't draw a lot of power plays. But when you have perfect correlation, a fine 5-on-5 matchup, a reasonable power play matchup, and almost no ownership, like I don't think you have to get there in single entry, but certainly if I was playing 50 or 100 lineups tonight, regardless of the contest, I'd be considering some of that Beniers line on the Seattle side. Not as much interest in the depth, mainly because the Toronto second line has been outstanding defensively with Calle Jarnkrok there. 1.2 expected goals against per 60 minutes over their last 95 minutes, with Jarnkrok skating with Tavares and Marner. So that kind of takes me out of Seattle too. Seattle 3 really doesn't get a ton of minutes. Like, I don't know if I'd full stack them. One off Tolvanen is fine. One off Bjorkstrand or something. Like, those are fine. But if I'm full stacking anything, it's Seattle 1. I mean, on the Toronto side, you want to talk about bad goaltending. It's not just a bad stretch here for Seattle. It's been a bad season and a half of goaltending for Seattle. This team is getting lit up. I mean, not the team, the goaltenders are getting lit up pretty regularly for the Kraken. Even, the last couple of games, only 3 goals against the Oilers in the Islanders. Before that, 7, 3, 5, I think they're bottom 3 by save percentage since Thanksgiving, and it's pretty close to that over the entire season. So really, I would go with Toronto 1 here because that Toronto second line, for as good as they have been defensively, so is that Seattle second line with Wenberg and Burakovsky playing together. Or not Wenberg and Burakovsky, sorry. Wenberg and Schwartz playing together have been really good defensively. I could see that kind of being a grinding matchup between Toronto 2 and Seattle 2. So it's both top lines that I like in this game. Obviously, Toronto's coming in with very heavy ownership. Our early top stacks run has them as the second highest owned line of the night, but I think they're still perfectly playable, especially where Bunting is still in the top power play unit and Seattle's penalty kill is still struggling.
Yes, I agree with that. And this is normally where we go to the defenseman, but something we talked about over the past few weeks is saving the defenseman for the end during the goalie and hat trick segment, just because we sometimes talk a little bit too much on the defenseman when you can just really sort by value. And, you have the power play guys. It's kind of obvious, but we will touch them. We will touch on them at the end. If you don't like how that flows, we are very open to feedback. But, we want to give you the more meat and potatoes, like the line talks and all that kind of stuff. So this will give us a few extra minutes, especially on days where we are crunched for time. So we will get to the defenseman at the end. So don't worry about that. We just want to get more information to you about the line stacks that we like, and it gives us a few extra minutes per game to break it down. So let's move on to the Rangers with a massive 3.7 road total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 2.7 total. Yaroslav Halak, surprising confirmation there. Jake Allen also confirmed. Wonder if Igor's under the weather because the Rangers don't play again until Saturday and they don't play again until Tuesday. It's not like they're on a back-to-back. Rangers going with Zibanejad, Kreider, and Kakko, Panarin, and Trocheck, Kravtsov. And then that's really all the pertinent information, really. Looks like the Canadiens are rolling back the top line of Doc, Suzuki, Caulfield. After that, I'm not sure. Like maybe there's some one-offs down there like Josh Anderson or something, but this is a Rangers game. This is a very good power play spot. Rangers have a very good power play. I think, you can just full stack the Zibanejad line. I think like one of the big things with that line earlier in the year, they had great expected goals numbers, but they weren't finishing. Now that the line's back together again, they're starting to finish here. So I think you can full stack that line. But if you want to leave Kakko off and put in, a Trocheck or a Panarin, I think that's fine. But I'm not against full stacking that line at all.
Yeah. I'll just start on the Montreal side, I guess, because you're right. There's not a whole lot to talk about here. Mike Hoffman looks like he's going to be healthy scratch. Brendan Gallagher is injured. So, there's just not a lot. Like, you're right. If you want to one-off Josh Anderson, I think that's always in play. Certainly Christian Dvorak with the ice time he usually gets, that. That's fine. But I think it's, it's Montreal one or bust here, right? They have been playing pretty well. We mentioned on the last show since December 1st, 2.9 expected goals for, 2.7 against. Being above average over a 5-week span on this team kind of speaks to how well they really have been playing. There definitely are issues with some of their, let's say shot generation. Like Nick Suzuki only has 14 shots in his last 10 games. That's like Alex Wenberg territory. Like, I hate to say it, but it just is. You definitely need more from him. They're going to be going into that Rangers top line, which, after I was looking at their numbers because they, the Rangers got off to a pretty hot start, or at least the power play did there back in October. So I was looking since November 1st. The top line for the Rangers, the Zibanejad line, 2.9 expected goals against in their sample with Kakko there. That's not very good defensively. They just have been excellent offensively. 3.4 expected goals for, 4.7 actual goals for. Obviously, you get Kreider and Zibanejad on the top power play unit. I did write up Chris Kreider in the picks article, free to read for anybody to head on over to Stokastic.com and check out the picks article. Kreider, top 5 projection by the Stokastic projections amongst all wingers, and considering he's 6,000 on DraftKings and only 6,600 on FanDuel, that's a very, very high projection on a 10-game slate for a guy in that price range. There are a lot of wingers that are much more expensive tonight than he is, obviously, like 20. So great value on Kreider. So I think there's good value on that entire top Rangers line. Obviously, New York is going to come in fairly heavily owned here because, one, they are cheap, at least on DK. The top line's under 17 grand. The second line's under 15 grand. Both lines have 2 out of 3 players on the top power play unit. It's one of the best matchups in the league going up against Montreal, which has been one of the worst defensive teams, especially over the last 6 weeks in the NHL, both at 5-on-5 and on the penalty kills. So I just think the Zibanejad line is, if you want to look at in-game matchups, they're going to see a lot of that Suzuki line, and I think that's the toughest defensive line to face in Montreal. So if you want to dip down to Panarin, Trocheck, and Kravtsov, I think that's fine. Maybe there's some worse leverage on them, but going up against Slafkovsky and Dvorak, or whatever else is there in the depth, like Armia and Dodonov on the third line or whatever, there's not much there that can challenge that Rangers second line. So I think both lines are fine. I think the top line, just looking at projections, presents a better value. But if you need to save some money, I have no problem going down to Rangers too. So I think my favorite line in this game is still the Rangers top line, just because it is really good value. Kreider kind of struggled to score, earlier in the season, but he's back. I think he has he has something like 10 goals in his last 20 games or something like that. Like he's been scoring close to a 40-goal pace after a slow start. So I'm just back in on Rangers one. I think they make a nice mid-price line here tonight.
Yeah, most of the Rangers scoring problems in the beginning of the season was shooting percentage related. Also, Gallant like throwing people all over the place in the lineup. But now that he's kind of simmered down on these line changes, and he's actually giving them a chance to play, and he's seeing results. Imagine that. So yeah, I really do like the Rangers tonight. I have to keep an eye on their ownership throughout the day. It's not like a end all be all, but like if they're coming in, 15, 16, 17% on a 10 gamer, you're going to have to find a way to get different if you want to, get away from the field a little bit here. Let's move on. St. Louis Blues with a 2.9 total heading into New Jersey. The Devils have a 3.6 total. Jordan Binnington, Mackenzie Blackwood are probable. Devils played last night. They beat the Wings 5-1. No skate for the Devils, but after, the thing is, Lindy Ruff still mixed up the lines in that win. He moved Jesper Bachquist to the top line with Hischier. I moved Tatar to the second line with Hughes, and Dawson Mercer went down and played 12 minutes, no power play time at all on the third line. So Lindy loves to mix up his stuff, but chances are Hischier and Bratt are going to be playing together. Chances are Hughes and Holla are going to be playing together. I think this is another scenario where you can just double center stack Hughes and Hischier with Bratt. Blues don't take a ton of penalties, and their penalty kill has improved, but it's still not great. This team is a shell of themselves. There's so many injuries. O'Reilly's out. Tarasenko's out. So I think, despite the Devils being on a back-to-back, they didn't travel. They had a fairly easy third period. I think going back to the Devils here makes a good play.
Yeah, those line combinations last night. Hischier and Bratt had at least 2 5-on-5 shifts with 3 different wingers, and it was a game they won 5-1.
Lindy Ruff just miserable for DFS.
I know a lot of the goal scoring came later in the game, but even still, they mixed up the wingers in the third period when they were up 3-0. It was, anyways. Just make sure you watch for that at warmups. There's sure to be some important news once the Devils hit the ice for warmups. One thing I did notice that Hischier and Bratt, the numbers are good without Thomas Tatar in the wings. Obviously, we have to see if he's going to be there in warmups. Hischier and Bratt started the game with Tatar yesterday, and then they moved on to Dawson Mercer, and then they moved on to Jesper Bachquist. But without Tatar on the wing, 2.8 expected goals for, 2.5 against in about 80 minutes together. It's still good, but that's nowhere near the elite level play we've seen from the Devils at times this year. Thomas Tatar is having a very underratedly great season. Especially when it comes to creating offense in the offensive zone for his teammates. I'm not sure Jesper Bachquist or even Mercer can do the same things, at least not right now. They're going to be going into that St. Louis top line, though. That top line's not very good defensively. They're up to about 75 minutes together, 3.5 expected goals against per 60 minutes. Neither of the top two lines, none of the St. Louis lines are going to be very good defensively. I mean, let's put it that way. They're all good matchups, but that's what kind of lends me, if I'm going to even strength stack, it would probably be dipping down to the second line with Hughes and Tatar. One of the reasons is, if Hughes and Tatar do skate together, you still get 2 out of 3 guys on the top power play unit, right? That was kind of the problem with Hughes at times. Is if he was playing with Mercer and Holla, Hughes would be the only guy on his power play unit, right? But if he's with Tatar, he should get 2 out of 3. He's had pretty good numbers with Tatar, 3 expected goals for, 3.1 expected goals for, 5.3 actual goals for. Hughes has 52 shots in his last 10 games. He's been playing truly at another level. If I'm even strength stacking, it would probably be Hughes, Tatar, and Holla. They are coming in a little bit higher owned than the top line, despite being basically the same price. So I think I'm with you. I would just do a double center stack, and then you can add Bratt, or you can add Tatar, or you can add a defenseman or something like that. It's the centers that you'd want to rely on for New Jersey. St. Louis is kind of interesting here because you know that top line of Kyrou, Buchnevich, and Thomas is going to get a lot of ice time, right? They all played 22 minutes in the last game. Now that went to overtime, so let's say at least 20 minutes through regulation. The Blues are carrying a 2.9 implied goal total. That's pretty good for being on the road in New Jersey. It is Mackenzie Blackwood in net. He has struggled at times pretty mightily this year. I don't know if I would get to St. Louis in a single entry. It's kind of like that's Seattle top line I just talked about. I don't know if I'd get there in single entry, but if I was playing, dozens of lineups, it's one of those that would make sure I would have, 2 or 3 shares. They're coming in with good leverage per our top stacks tool. Top stacks coming in at 4.7% leverage, only 2.2% ownership. On DraftKings, they have a 6.9% top stack percentage. It's just below the Rangers top line that we just talked about, and no one's playing them. So I think you have to consider the St. Louis top line here, especially Blackwood has a bad game. Any line can go off against them. So I don't mind St. Louis one here, actually, but it's the Hughes line specifically targeting the New Jersey power play guys here. It's just a really good matchup with all the Blues injuries that they have.
Yeah, I like that point about the St. Louis Blues top line just because there's not much ownership on them. They're a line that we played heavily last season. Granted, it's a little bit different iteration, but they've gotten no ownership this season. This is I don't want to say it's a great matchup, but Blackwood's I think the worst high danger save percentage in the NHL over the past 3 or 4 years. If it's not worst, he's in the bottom 3. So
yeah. I mean, if you look at our lineup builder, that St. Louis top line has a higher projection than either of the top 2 New Jersey lines, even strength lines. Anyway, it's different if you might power play stack, but 2.9 goals is not nothing on the road, and with all the minutes that they're going to play plus power play time, where the goals are probably going to come from if they do score 3. If they happen to score 3 or 4, so I don't think you can just dismiss St. Louis right out of hand.
Yeah, and I think this might anger some Blues fans, but I think Kyrou is a better goal scorer than Tarasenko is. So
at this point, I'd agree with that, especially with the way Tarasenko's played this half year. Yeah.
So yeah, this is the better offense, at least offensively, iteration of that line. 2%. Mackenzie Blackwood net. 2.9 road total, which is large considering the rest of this lineup. So yeah, I do really like the Blues top line here. Let's move to the people's main event. I know it's Cliffy's main event. Arizona Coyotes with a 2.8 total heading into Philadelphia. The Flyers have a 3.3 total. I can't believe this is a real game. Malka and Carter Hart is confirmed. Oh my.
It's like that LeBron James meme. I can't believe this is my life.
Yeah, this is
except not in the same way that he meant it.
Man, I want to play both sides of this game, honestly, but these lines are just brutal. I think the thing is Konechny's so expensive on DraftKings. And it's just a problem. I guess you can pair him with Farabee to bring the cost average down because Farabee at least shoots the puck. You could play Frost and Van Riemsdyk for the power play, but do you really want to play Morgan Frost and James Van Riemsdyk? I guess you could power play stack. And then on the Coyote side, that top line without, I guess Nick Schmaltz is going to be back tonight, so that top line does have some interest for me. I guess you can do some kind of Keller, Schmaltz, Chikrin or something like that. You can leave Boyd off if you want. You can do Kraus, Bukestad. This game, if this game finished 7-6, it wouldn't surprise me. I feel like you need to at least consider both sides.
Yeah, I'm with you. And especially with the way Philadelphia does their line matching, what they do is use the Cates Konechny line in the shutdown role, which means Cates Konechny and Farabee up against Schmaltz, Keller, and Boyd. Cates, Konechny, and Farabee have not been good this year. 2.1 expected goals for, 4.2 against, a 33% expected goal share. They're getting just ran over whenever they're on the ice together. Not like Arizona 1 is a lead or anything. Like, they're below 50% expected goal share on their own. But it's more like 47% expected goal share, not 33%. So it's a pretty good 5-on-5 matchup for Arizona. Here's the problem. One of the problems I have with the Arizona top line is that you probably want them in a good power play spot. And believe it or not, the Flyers have had a really good penalty kill for a while now. If you go back to Thanksgiving, which is, 6 weeks ago now? 6 weeks ago today, I believe. The only team giving up fewer shots per minute on the penalty kill than the Flyers is Carolina. That's a span of 18 games now. Like, the Flyers penalty kill has been really, really good. That's the one thing that kind of takes me out of Arizona a little bit here, or else I would be considering them. If it was a little bit of it, like if this was Arizona and Montreal or something like that, like I'd probably be firing up at least Schmaltz and Keller here. The problem is like, as good of a 5-on-5 matchup as it is for the Coyotes top line, and I think it's a really good one, I think it's a really bad one on the power play. And that's kind of a problem, especially in 2023, where the NHL's offense has been so power play reliant. It's been a couple seasons like that now, but this season especially. So I don't hate the idea of going to the Arizona top line. I noticed Clay Keller 12 games. This guy's on a point per game pace on this team. I can't wait to see what he does with Connor Bedard in a couple of years. But that's kind of the reason why I'm out on Arizona. If you want to play him, I'm not going to say it's a bad play or anything like that by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're a fine play. I just think there are other spots at roughly the same price that I would go to instead. On the Flyers side, I wrote up JVR in the picks article. I mean, yeah, you can make fun of Tippett, Frost, and JVR, but they have been playing pretty well together. 2.9 expected goals for, 2.6 against in over 100 minutes in their sample. They're going to be playing the Arizona depth. They don't get sent out against the top line. The Arizona second line without Matthias Michelli has also been getting ran over like the Flyers. Kate's line has been.
That's quite a sentence.
Yeah. So I do think Van Riemsdyk, Tippett, and Frost are in a very good spot. And Arizona's the most penalized team in the NHL with a bad penalty kill. The Flyers don't have a very good power play, but it is one of the few good power play spots for them. So I'll go Van Riemsdyk, Tippett, and Frost because of the 2 out of 3 you get power play correlation. Like, if you want to take off Tippett and put in Konechny instead, make it a little more expensive, or put in Hayes instead, make it a little bit more expensive and get more power play correlation, I think that's perfectly fine. But it's Tippett, Van Riemsdyk, and Frost that I'm focusing on in this game.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, Konechny, like 7,800. That's crazy expensive, but I think he's at that price. He's going to go overlooked in GPPs.
I agree with that, which is why I don't really hate taking Tippett out, putting Konechny in. Like, I'll say I've been looking at some extra data from different websites. Like, the way Konechny's playing this year isn't a mirage. His scoring chance creation at 5-on-5 is insane. His zone entries leading to scoring chances are amongst the best in the league. Like, he's not just riding a hot percentage or something like that. He's legitimately playing like one of the top scoring wingers in the league. It's just that he's playing on a super bad team. So like Keller, nobody's really paying attention.
Yeah. I think, like, at first I was like, wow, I don't want to play him at that price. That's crazy. But, like, the more I think about it, the more I think he's a better play in GPPs just because of his price. So, yeah.
I mean, I think he's a guy you can just go ahead and one-off. Like, if you don't want to pay for one of the super expensive one-offs like Pasternak or Ovechkin or, basically those two guys, you can save yourself, almost $2,000 from Pasternak and just go jam in some Konechny against one of the worst teams in the league anyway.
Yeah, I like that idea. As we mentioned off the top of the show, we are sponsored by BetMGM, and we can get you up to $1,000 risk-free bet and 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, make a deposit, and make your first paid wager. Pretty easy. You need a Stokastic account. It's free to make. If you don't have one, you log in. Then you click the BetMGM button, follow the steps. It includes making a BetMGM account, which is fairly easy. You deposit at least 10. It is up to you how much you want to deposit, but the minimum for the risk-free bet is 10. The max is 1,000. You make that free bet. I have a bet for you on BetMGM, so if you want to tail that bet risk-free, you can. Alex Ovechkin over half a power play point tonight at plus 105 on BetMGM. So go bet that. After your bet settles, you'll receive an email from BetMGM, not Stokastic. It'll be from BetMGM with instructions for redeeming your 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. If you don't like that bet, go make an Odd Shopper account. That's where I got the bet from. Odd Shopper is great. You can get the tools to find. They have player compare tools, player prop tools. Go make a free account. Go find a prop bet that you like. Bet it. The most important part, as always, you need to click the link in the description. That will take you through step by step. We will get the credit, which helps us give you more free content throughout the season. Let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Nashville Predators with a 2.4 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.5 total. It appears the rich get richer. Max Pacioretty. I think he's a game time decision tonight. I don't know if they announced him in or out. He practiced with them this morning.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's in.
Yeah, they haven't really given him who he's playing with because when Paul Stastny had a maintenance day, Pacioretty slid in with Necas and Svechnikov with Martin Necas as the center. I don't think Martin Necas has ever played center in the NHL.
I mean, not for months at a time. Maybe he had a game here or there, but no.
So, I mean, this is a 7:00 Eastern start, so we will get warm-ups. Luckily, DraftKings didn't, fix the min price tag. Pacioretty is 6,100. So it's going to help them. This is a good power play spot. It depends where he slots in, but, I would imagine if he does get top power play time, Seth Jarvis is going to go to power play too. So just be aware of where he slots in, who you're stacking, etc. I like Carolina here. They're not getting too much ownership now. We don't have a run with Pacioretty because we don't know where he's going to be. But Nashville's penalty kill is not great. UC Saros has been better of late, but the Nashville penalty kill gives up a ton of shots, and these lines, don't really inspire much confidence.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I think what would happen is Stastny, Necas, Svechnikov stays together. Martinook goes to the fourth line. Teravainen goes to play with Stahl and Fast, and then Pacioretty plays with Jarvis and Aho. Because of all the wingers that they have in the top 9 that would go to the fourth line, it's Martinook, right? Maybe Jarvis if he had been struggling or something. But he's been playing so well with Aho since Aho came back there a couple weeks ago that Jarvis got moved to the top power play unit. So I can't see him going from effectively, second line top power play to fourth line second power play just because one guy came back. You know what I mean? I think it might be Teravainen that gets shoved down to the scoring line or to the checking line. Sorry, but we'll find out when warmups hit. And another reason why I think they don't really mess too much, especially with the Stastny line, is the Stastny line's been just lights out since they got put together. They're up over 140 minutes together, which off the top of my head would be about 12 games worth. So it's not a tiny sample. 4.4 expected goals for per 60 minutes, 3.8 against. Svechnikov, 23 shots in his last 5 games. I even wrote up Svechnikov again in that picks article over at Stokastic.com. He had seen a lull in his shot generation just prior to Stastny joining him as his center. And he's, jumped up considerably, 3.5 shots per game since Stastny moved to his line. So he's changed their outlook at 5-on-5. And what I mentioned in that article is Nashville's just a bad defensive team. UC Saros and Kevin Lankinen are really papering over a lot of the issues Nashville has. 24th by expected goals against at 5-on-5 this season, and that's worse than Edmonton, Buffalo, and Detroit. 27th by shots against on the penalty kill. They're in the middle of the league by goals against because of Saros and Lankinen. So it's a pretty good matchup for Carolina. They're obviously going to be sending out the checking line, I assume, against Parsonen and Forsberg. So I'll just say off the hop, I have no interest in any of the Nashville lines. Parsonen and Forsberg are going to get a brutal checking line matchup. Duchesne's playing with Mark Jankowski. It's like, here you go, 40-goal scorer. You get to play with Mark Jankowski. And then there's, Glass and Niederreiter have been playing reasonably well. But, do I want to go in on Glass and Niederreiter going into Carolina facing, either the Aho or the Stastny line? It's like, no. So nothing from Nashville. For me, it would be Stastny, Necas, and Svechnikov as long as they stay together. We just kind of have to see what warmups are like, because that Carolina top line has been excellent since Stastny got moved there. And as long as they're together, that's the line that I have interest in from a DFS perspective. And we're not showing a ton of Carolina ownership right now. Even though they do have a 3.5 total, like that's a higher total than the Oilers have at home tonight, right? It's a pretty big total for Carolina. Not a ton of ownership. Stastny, Necas, Svechnikov for me.
What happens when we get to warm-ups, and what happens if they run that line that they practice? Stastny's off, and Pacioretty's on with Necas and Svechnikov.
I mean, we just talked about a double center stack from New Jersey, and there's a double center stack later on in the slate. Now, they're both kind of expensive, so I think you'd have to probably double punt defenseman. But there are double center stacks elsewhere on the slate that we'll be able to use. I think it would be just fine. And certainly nobody would have a triple wing, not nobody, but very few people would have a triple wing Necas, Svechnikov, Pacioretty line.
Yeah, maybe we have to try to build that later in the show, see what options we got. Let's move on to the next one, another power play spot. Washington Capitals with a 3.7 total heading into Columbus. The Blue Jackets have a 2.7 total. Darcy Kemper, Elvis Merzlikins confirmed. Elvis Merzlikins min price on DraftKings tonight. Maybe he's down at the bottom with the high danger save percentage up with Blackwood too. So I don't know. Columbus mixed up their lines. It's going to be Gustav Nyquist, Jack Roslovic, and Patrick Laine. Top line of Johnny Gaudreau, Kent Johnson, and Emil Bemstrom. Capitals running back their lines. It seems this is a good power play spot. I wish Columbus took a little bit more penalties. They don't take a ton, but I don't think it's going to take much for the Capitals to capitalize on the power play if they get 3 or 4 opportunities tonight. I do really like the Caps tonight.
Yeah. Especially with Ovechkin moving along with Kuznetsov. It just seems Dylan Strome he's played. I'll give him credit. He's played well in Washington this year. Just never seemed he really found that scoring touch with Ovechkin, despite playing well at 5-on-5. I think it's one thing to play well at 5-on-5. It's another thing to be able to generate good scoring chances and goals. Kuznetsov has definitely been able to do that with Ovechkin. 2.9 expected goals for together this year, 5.5 actual goals for. Now, obviously, the shooting percentage is very high, over 16%. But if you bring it down to 11 or 12%, they're still well over 3 goals per 60 minutes, which is very good. Kuznetsov has 18 points in his last 16 games. I think that's gone off pretty quietly. He's been very good offensively. TJ Oshie coming back. We've said it before. He makes a big difference for this power. Or not coming back. He was back last game, but he's back in the lineup. He makes a big difference for the power play. The problem is it's not really a great power play spot. The Columbus penalty kill has generally been fine all season. I was looking over the last 5 weeks, still middle of the league by goals against. They don't take a ton of penalties. So I think you're fine. Ovechkin's always a one-off that you can use. If you want to play Kuznetsov and Ovechkin, that's fine as well. TJ Oshie projecting very well on DraftKings for his price. We have him at nearly 8.7 points for a $4,000 price tag. So if you want to throw him in with Ovechkin or with Kuznetsov or with the two of them or whatever. I think that's perfectly fine. The Columbus second line of Nyquist, Roslovic, and Laine is where I'm looking here, and it's why I kind of have a little bit of interest in a second line of Strome and Oshie, or just using Oshie by himself. Nyquist and Roslovic have very bad defensive numbers together. Roslovic and Laine have been almost worse. 1.9 expected goals for per 60, 2.7 expected goals against. That Columbus second line, whether Nyquist and Roslovic or Roslovic and Laine, doesn't matter which duos you look at, they've been getting caved in defensively. So I don't mind going to Washington 2 here. Strome and Oshie, should both be getting some top power play time. Put him in with Ovechkin, stack across even strength stacks. As much as it's not a great power play spot, the power play guys are relatively cheap, and it's a 3.7 total. I do like that cap second line a little bit, though. I don't think I can make a lineup without Ovechkin is the problem. So you could even do like Strome, Oshie, Ovechkin, something like that for sure.
Yeah, I agree there. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get to the Blue Jackets in 1 to 3 tonight. There's just so many spots tonight.
I have no interest in Columbus in this game. Yeah. Gaudreau, him and Johnson have played fine together, but pretty low event. That second line is perfectly correlated on the power play, but Washington's had a pretty good penalty kill for most of the season. Washington doesn't take a ton of penalties, only 2.9 per game. That's well below the league average. That's over 10% lower. So no. Yeah. There's just like the prices aren't even that great. You know what I mean? If I don't know, line it was like 5,400, not 7,200 maybe, but this is just not the matchup. Let's move on to the next one. New York Islanders with a 2.7 total. Heading into Edmonton, the Oilers have a 3.3 total. Elias Sorokin, Jack Campbell are confirmed. Looks like Klim Kostin up on the top line with Hyman and McDavid. He's been priced. Yeah.
So I don't really like stacking against Sorokin, but I hate to admit it. I've watched a whole bunch of Islanders games recently, and holy moly, have they been hemmed into their own zone, giving up a ton of shots. So I guess it's twofold. I think I have interest in Sorokin at his price, but man, here we are again, low-owned McDavid. Will give you nightmares if you fade him and he goes off. You know what I mean? So, again, this isn't a very good power play spot at all. The Islanders have a good penalty kill. The Islanders have one of the best goalies in the league. The Islanders don't take many penalties. But, man, 4% McDavid, that's you have to consider that for GPPs.
Yeah, and what I brought up in the picks article, we'll talk about Darnell Nurse when we talk about the defenseman. I do like Nurse here today. What I talked about was that it's not really a great power play spot for Edmonton, but Edmonton is one of the teams that's, relatively matchup proof on the power play. There's no penalty kill where I would say there's no chance Edmonton succeeds here, or very little chance, right? The Islanders don't take a lot of penalties, but the Oilers do draw a lot of power plays. The Islanders do get hemmed in their zone a fair bit. Beauvillier, Nelson, and Lee is probably going to be the line. This is where we have to remind people that the Islanders, they didn't have a full team skate today. I don't think the beat writers were even there. One of them were saying, and they did mix up their lines quite a bit last game. I think Lee and Barzal played the third period together. So if you are playing the Islanders, just make sure you're watching at warm-ups in case they do pull something kind of funny. But for now, we're expecting Bailey, Barzal, and Cizikas with the normal Brock Nelson line. Hyman and McDavid have been able to generate offense basically with whomever has been skating along beside them, whether it's Puljujarvi, whether it's Draisaitl. In fact, I was looking at their numbers without Puljujarvi or Draisaitl beside them. 3.9 expected goals for, 4.3 actual goals for 60 minutes of 5-on-5. The Islanders, that Nelson line has been better defensively over like the last month, but going back years, they're pretty bad defensively, below average expected goal share. So it's not a bad 5-on-5 matchup for Edmonton, which is not something that they get very often. It's just not a great power play matchup for them. I do think it's one of those situations where you can one-off Connor McDavid, right? Like, I don't want to one-off McDavid at 17% ownership, where he probably comes in at like 24%. But if he's going to be like 4% projected own, maybe coming in at like 6-7% in some single entry contest, then yeah, I do think he's perfectly acceptable as a one-off. Bring along Zach Hyman if you want for that power play exposure. But I don't really mind the Edmonton top line here. Nothing on the Edmonton second line for me. Draisaitl just doesn't have anybody to play with. It's just that simple. Until Evander Kane comes back, there's just no one to play with him at 5-on-5. So you're really relying on him getting 3 points on the at least 2 points on the power play, and maybe you can luck out at even strength to get that 3-point bonus. So Edmonton won for me, particularly Hyman, McDavid. On the Islanders side, pretty reasonable ownership on the Islanders that we're showing right now. It is a pretty good power play spot for them as well. Like, I know the power play has been struggling a little bit. But Nelson Lee, Beauvillier, if they do play together 5-on-5 or on the power play together, they do have very good offensive numbers together this year. None of the Edmonton lines are really good defensively, at least not until maybe some bottom six lines, grind things down, but that's about it. And the Oilers do take a lot of penalties, 3.6 times shorthanded per game. I don't mind the Nelson Lee Beauvillier line here as long as they're skating together. I guess we'll find out at warmups.
Yeah, the problem I have with the Islanders here is one, like, they've looked so bad in this road trip. Now you can't really quantify that into anything. But like, two, the price here, they're like 15-6 on DraftKings. Like, I'd rather play, like, in 1 to 3 lineups, I'd rather play the Trocheck Panarin line than them. And that reflects in the ownership. So, like, yeah, I think the Islanders are a pretty decent, like, 20 max to 150. But in 1 to 3, in a 2.7 road total, I'd rather, go to the 3.7 total for the Rangers, play the Panarin line for a little bit more ownership. And I think that's fine. Like, you can differentiate yourself. If you want to play the Islanders top line, I wouldn't tell you no. But, like, it's not something I personally like to do. Like, I just, for whatever it is, Islanders lines just give me headaches. But like at 1-2% projected right now, I think, if you want to put them in as a contrarian stack, I think this is a good matchup. We've talked about bad goalies on this slate. Jack Campbell has been awful this year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's your reason. Like, combined with low ownership, like, it's Jack Campbell. Like, he's been bad. I think that was my Islanders spiel. I feel better. I feel like I had a weight.
Felt like you had to get that out. Like, you've been holding that in for too long.
Whew. Woosah, Captain. Remember your pressure point. Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, we had an NHL 3-day free trial. Now we have an NHL 5-day free trial. You please click the link in the description below. It'll get you access to every slate this week, which is, 3-day. It's kind of like, oh, there might be a smaller slate in there, but for 5 days, you're going to get at least 3 big slates there. You get all the important stuff. You get everything. You get projections. You get ownership. You get top stacks. You get rankings. And I think the most invaluable thing is you get the Discord. You get, lineup alerts like the Vasilevsky, Brian Elliott scramble yesterday, which was a mess. We were on top of that. You get access to a whole bunch of sharp minds. A lot of our subs are insanely good at DFS. Like, I'll ask them questions. Cliff will ask them questions. Like, it's just a really good back and forth. We do some betting talk. So yeah, man, make sure you click the link in the description. You get 5-day risk-free trial. You get everything, a test drive for free. Sign up, come in the Discord, say I came from YouTube so we know it's you. And yeah, we'll see you there. Colorado Avalanche, 3.3 total. Heading into Vancouver, the Canucks have a 2.8 total. Alexander Georgiev, probable. Colin Delia, confirmed. Vancouver mixed up their lines, I think, in a positive way for once. It's Kuzmenko, Pettersson, and JT Miller, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Pettersson and Kuzmenko could drag me to respectability. Now they actually get someone who can score. Although JT Miller, like, honestly, has had a terrible season. But, like, JT Miller there, fully correlated, is probably the best iteration of the Pettersson line we've seen this season. The top line is still Horvat, Besser, and Mikheyev, which is also nice. Top line for the Avs, massive ownership for a 10-game slate for good reason. Canucks are, what's a good at? Disheveled defensively.
That's a good word.
Yeah. Colin Delia in net, like he's their third string at best. So, yeah, like Avs one definitely in play here. It's just an ownership question. Like it's up to your personal preference. Like they have a massive projection. They're almost getting projected for 50 points. So yeah, like Avs top line, probably my favorite spot of the night. But that Kuzmenko, Pettersson, JT Miller line has my attention.
Yeah, it is that Pettersson Kuzmenko line that I did write up in the picks art. Well, I wrote up JT Miller because he does have a very strong projection here tonight. Two reasons. One, he's playing with Kuzmenko and Pettersson. And yeah, whether it's been Mikheyev, whether it's been Lane Peterson, whether it's been, I think Brock Besser spent some time on that line. Doesn't matter who it's been. They've been very, very good offensively. Miller and Pettersson haven't been that great together offensively going back to last year. They have 120 minutes together since Bruce Boudreau got hired. 2.6 expected goals for per 60 minutes, 3 actual goals for. That's not great. It's fine. It's good even. It's just not great. It's the power play matchup that's really driving me here, right? Colorado about league average by time shorthanded per game. But as I wrote in the picks article under the section on JT Miller, under the stacking section to stack JT Miller and Pettersson and Kuzmenko, Colorado penalty kill is like 22nd by shots against, around the same by, maybe a little bit worse by goals against over the last 6 weeks. Not really good on the PK. The Vancouver power play has been very good, whether it's been Kuzmenko, whether it's been Besser. Kuzmenko is expected to be there, so they are perfectly correlated. They're not that expensive either. That Vancouver Pettersson line coming in 16,800 on DraftKings, 3 to 4% ownership, perfectly correlated at home. Like, I know this team has looked like a train wreck basically the entire season, but they still have had some very big offensive games because the power play can do a lot of damage against basically anybody. So I do like the Pettersson, Miller, Kuzmenko line here, coming in with positive leverage by the top stacks tool as well. Obviously, Colorado's the main attraction here. They are coming in with 48.4 projected DK points combined, which is absolutely absurd. That's usually reserved for, Toronto 1 in a great home matchup. Maybe Edmonton if Hyman and Draisaitl and McDavid are all on the same line together or something like that. And the reason for that is Vancouver's penalty kill. Vancouver last in the league by penalty kill percentage. I think it's under 68%. Like they're only killing like 1 out of 3 penalties they take, which is just absolutely unfathomable considering we're in January now. The Colorado power play was a lot better with Nathan MacKinnon there this season. Hate to be Captain Obvious, but shots up 25%, goals like tripled. A lot of it, obviously, that's shooting percentage related, but that MacKinnon helps shooting percentages on the power play isn't a surprise to me. So, like Colorado 1, I think might be my favorite line on the slate. I just worry that they come in like really, really heavily owned. It is just a great spot for them though. So it's Colorado 1 and the Pettersson line that I like in this one.
Yeah, I like Georgiev has been pretty good. Like he's had some really leaky games this season. If Pettersson, Kuzmenko, JT Miller coming in 4 or 5%, I definitely have interest. I think you can consider them in 1 to 3. Let's move on to the next one. Pittsburgh Penguins with a 2.9 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3.1 total. Casey DeSmith is probable. Aiden Hill Man, we were just rolling with some goalies today. Adin Hill is confirmed. Jack Eichel back tonight. We'll slot in with Stone and Stevenson.
No.
Oh wait, no, sorry.
Yeah, they're leaving Amadio together, and then they're putting Smith and Roy with Eichel.
Yeah, sorry. I kind of just had a moment there. I chewed it over with Twix. Brian Russ still on the top line with Crosby and Gensel, moves Ricard Raquel down to the second line with Malkin and Zucker. There is no ownership on this game at all. Eichel, Smith, Roy is just a weird line. Like, if Pittsburgh's top line is going to come in around 2% and that second line is going to be under 1%, I do have interest there, not because I like stacking teams going into Vegas. It's because Adin Hill is starting. If this was Logan Thompson, I'd be like, if you get some Pittsburgh in your crunches, that's perfectly fine. But like this Pittsburgh top line has a projection of almost 38 points, which is very high. And Adin Hill has not been great this season. So I do have some MME interest in the Pitt top line.
Yeah, and that Pitt top line has played well together this year. They have about 135 minutes together. 3.4 expected goals for, 3.6 actual goals for. They played some pretty heavy minutes in that Winter Classic against Boston. Some of the guys at the bottom of the Pittsburgh lineup only played like 6-7 minutes in that one. So maybe they play some heavy minutes here. Like Vegas is still missing a lot of guys on the blue line, like Shea Theodore out, Zach Whitecloud out, Alec Martinez. That's a pretty big hit to that blue line. And goaltenders haven't been playing. Like the reason Adin Hill seems to be getting a few more starts of late is because the goaltenders haven't been playing well for Vegas for basically a month now. So I agree with you. Like I think that Pittsburgh top line is definitely in play here. They'll probably face off against Smith, Stone, and Stevenson. And that Vegas line they've been really good offensively, but not that great defensively. 2.8 expected goals against per 60 minutes. Now, they were using Carlson and Smith in a shutdown role, when they were at home about a week or so ago. But I don't think they send Jack Eichel in that role unless he has Mark Stone beside him. Like, I'm just kind of guessing here. Not that it really matters, but the Pittsburgh second line is the weaker defensive line, the Malkin Raquel line. So should also know Jack Eichel being back is going to move Michael Amadio off the top power play unit. So each of the Vegas top two lines have two guys on them on the top power play unit. Amadio, Stone, Stevenson is the line that I still like. The problem is like Stevenson at 5,800, like you really are relying on him on getting 3 assists or something like that. Like he has a lot of three-point games this season. It seems like he just breaks out randomly, but they have been playing very well, reasonably priced. Casey DeSmith and net. Jarry got hurt in that game against Boston, so I assume it'll be DeSmith. Not a bad matchup going up against either Pittsburgh line, but not a bad matchup going up against the Penguins. It is Vegas one that I like on the Pittsburgh side. Pittsburgh top line as well. I think this is a top line game for me.
Yep. Let's get to the last game of the night and more goalies, more bad goalies, but Boston Bruins with a 3.3 total heading into Los Angeles. The Kings have a 2.7. Jeremy Swayman confirmed. Phoenix Copley, who is like 48-1 in his last 49 games started for the Kings, it feels like, is going for the Kings. This is an excellent power play spot for the Bruins. Jake DeBrusk is hurt as well, which means David Pastrnak moving up to the top line here. That makes that top line very, very expensive on DraftKings. Pasternak's the most expensive player on DraftKings tonight, 9,600. He's more expensive than McDavid. And then both Marchand and Bergeron are 7,400. So that top line is, doing quick math in my head, 21-4. I think I did that correctly. That's actually not awful. This is, again, very good power play spot. They're not getting a ton of ownership here now just because there's an unbelievable amount of spots here, but well-owned old Boston one going into a matchup that is tasty on the power play has some late hammer attention here.
Yeah. And one thing that we do talk about a lot is that going back a few years, the top line for Boston typically does score more with Pasternak there than DeBrusk. I don't think that's a big surprise to anybody with how good Pasternak is. But the other thing is this season, Pasternak is shooting about 50% more at 5-on-5 when he's playing with Bergeron than when he's playing with anybody else. So not only does Pasternak get a great 5-on-4 matchup, I think it's not a bad 5-on-5 matchup for him now that he's back with Bergeron. It's kind of a tough matchup going up against that Danault Arvidsson shutdown line. It's not as tough as when Trevor Moore is there, but still not a very good one. Phoenix Copley has been playing well. It's just a very prohibitive price for me. That Boston top line coming in 24,000 and change, I think. If I do the math.
Yeah, I did my math way wrong.
Yeah, 96, 74, 74, 14.8 plus almost 10K. So it's 24.4. That's almost half your cap on DraftKings. There are some good, one-off cheap guys that you can use. It's just a really tough fit. I just don't know if I'd want to pay all the way up for them at that price. I think I'd rather play Edmonton at home to Sorokin and do some sort of Edmonton stack with like McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman or something like that than play Boston on the road in this one. But I'll never say that playing that Boston top line with Pasternak there perfectly correlated on the power play is a bad choice. I think they're always in play no matter who they're playing against. It's just a pricing thing for me. Should mention morning skate was going on while we were on the show. Taylor Hall was moved up to the top power play unit in Jake DeBrusk's spot, and Charlie McAvoy took over for Hampus Lindholm. So McAvoy back on the top power play unit as well. Nothing for me from Los Angeles. Why can't they start Allmark? You know what I mean? That's the one thing that's bugging me here. There's no real sample with the second line with Zaka and Krejci without Pasternak there. So don't know how they'll play. The sample with Byfield on the top line with the Kings is fine, not great. I think with Los Angeles, it would be, maybe one-offing a pretty cheap Adrian Kempe, especially where Boston really does take a ton of penalties. I think that's fine. I think, one-offing Victor Arvidsson, I think is fine. I just don't think I'm stacking anything from Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's hard to get full stacks out of the Kings, even against Swayman. Like, they need to – I just don't really like their lines. And I definitely don't want to stack a line going into Bergeron, even if, it is Swayman in net. Coming up after us, we have the No House Advantage Thursday night NBA show at 3:30 with Terry and Gundacker. After that, the NBA Deeper Dive at 5 p.m. with Ryan and Adam. So make sure to stick around for that if you're interested in NBA. Also, make sure to smash that like button. There is almost 140 of you in here. So if you haven't hit that like button, please do. It helps us out a lot. Let's talk about some defensemen since we are here. We haven't mentioned defensemen. One thing I will say is when we used to go game by game, we'd always be like, oh, yeah, the power play quarterback. I'm not really going to mention some power play quarterbacks here. I want to give you some value defensemen here. Obviously, if a team is in a good spot and you like them, pairing the power play quarterback with them is the obvious play. I have a couple cheap guys that I really like circled. I will kick it to Cliffy after that. I have like a list of like 15 guys that I really like, but I did circle 4 that stood out above the rest for me in terms of value. Nick Hague, 3,100 for Vegas. Damon Severson, 2,800. He is on the second power play unit as well. Justin Schultz, 3,300, running that top power play unit for Seattle. And my homer take is Keandre Miller at 3,200. Anyone else really standing out for you?
Yeah, I'll mention Justin Schultz. Like I said earlier, his power play unit's typically the better one. The least penalty kill really hasn't been great. He's going to have absolutely no ownership here tonight. I think if you're playing tournaments, he's a guy that you probably should be including. I do think it's a good spot. I'm going to mention a couple of the expensive defensemen here. Alex Pietrangelo has played at least 27 minutes in 5 straight games, averaging over 30 minutes in those games. He's going to play monster minutes against the Penguins here with all the injuries on the blue line. So I like him. Obviously, Cale Makar as well in that power play spot up against Vancouver. For defensemen on the cheaper side, Cam York is kind of interesting to me. He's been arguably the best offensive defenseman for the Flyers. The only problem is he's not on the power play, and or the top power play anyway, and it's a great power play spot. I think him or Tony DeAngelo from Philly are both definitely in play. Brett Pesce, his price came down on DraftKings to $3,500. When he's in the mid threes in a 3.5 total, I always will play Brett Pesce when he's at home. I mentioned Darnell Nurse in the picks article as well. He's really been putting up the peripherals. I think that game's more about the 5-on-5 matchup than the power play. I don't think the power play is as important. So I do like Darnell Nurse quite a bit as well. And the last guy I'll mention is Scott Mayfield. Been shooting the puck a little bit for the Islanders. Always loves to block. Probably going to have to block a lot of shots against Edmonton here tonight.
Yep. And one thing I will add before we get to goalies, we always get asked, who's your favorite punt defenseman? Like min price. Everyone always wants some min price guys or close to min price. I have 2 min price guys, Martin Fairbury for the Caps at min price on DraftKings, Sebastian Aho, the other one for the Islanders, also min price. I also have Alex Carrier circled 2,600 for Nashville, and Brett Kulak 2,700 for Edmonton. He's been getting minutes, so don't mind them. This is a quite the slate for goalies here. Anyone you really like?
I mean, I did like Stewie Skinner until they announced Jack Campbell, so I'm out on that. I'm really considering, if I'm not playing Carolina, I think you really have to consider UC Saros at 6,900 on DraftKings. You know, what I wrote about in the picks articles, there are a lot of games where, you know, even giving up 3 or 4 goals against Carolina, you can still put up over 20 DK points because of the shot volume the Hurricanes can generate. King Carl, I'll always play. I'll always consider King Carl. I imagine there won't be a ton of ownership on him going against the Flyers. Don't mind Darcy Kemper here tonight either for the Caps. He's been playing reasonably well. Most of the season, the Jackets have really struggled to score with their injuries, so don't mind Darcy Kemper, especially on FanDuel. I think he's got a pretty reasonable price over on FanDuel. Ilya Sorokin, if you really want to gamble, anytime he's super cheap, it's kind of like Saros. Anytime he's really cheap, I'll always consider him. Edmonton's obviously a pretty tough matchup. He can get lit up, but 7,200, I think he's definitely playable.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I will just say, as Cliffy says, if you really want to ride the Lightning, Ellis Merzlikins min price tonight. If you have a lineup you really like and you need the space, you just hope he goes positive. Like positive points at min price might be okay there. It's just quite a scene. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
I mean, this could get kind of messed up with the way they run their lines. We'll see at warm-ups, but I'm taking Andrei Svechnikov.
I had a feeling you were going with a Kane here. I got to go spicy like I always do. Do I, though? I'm going Jordan Kyrou.
Oh, that would be
spicy. That's like, he's a top liner, but that's a spicy pick for this slate.
Yeah, it is, especially where there won't be much ownership on St. Louis going to New Jersey. I like it.
Yeah. We will be. Are we back tomorrow? I think so. We'll be back on Saturday. We'll make sure to use the lineup builder more. We'll bring that up. We've had some issues screen sharing. I think we've gotten those ironed out, so we will definitely be using those more often going forward. So for some Cliffy, I am Josh. Smash that like. Take advantage of those signups. We'll see you in Discord. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck, everyone.